What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 458 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Dinkmeyer and Austin Yamada to talk about a nice comeback win, a rebound, I should say, from the Oklahoma City Thunder to draw it even 1-1 as we head to Indiana for Game 3. Excited to talk about it. OKC, very impressive. We'll talk about how so and if they can sustain it. Austin, how you doing?
Good. I almost got the Aaron Wiggins over Casey Wallace, but I did not by a minute and a half. I think this is the closest I'm going to come all series.
Yeah, shout out Aaron Wiggins. We had the over and my flag plant. That was really nice. We'll talk about him and how he impacted the game. Certainly, SGA is probably the star of the show, but Aaron Wiggins is the second star. But Dink, how's it going? You and I are podcasting from. I'm above you by one floor and about maybe 30 feet. I'm above you. I was not above you last night and on Showdown. Shout out to you for winning. But how's it going? How's it going downstairs?
Yeah, it's all good. You mentioned OKC rebounding, and I think that was actually a big story in Game 2, the rebounding side of things. They really shored up the boards, kept Indiana kind of like out of their pace and their transition stuff, and I think that was really helpful for OKC. So I'm doing great, fresh off a Showdown win. That's always fun. And here with you and some of the other ETR guys live on a little ETR retreat, always good. So happy in a good place and ready to talk Game 2, what we saw, and Game 3, what we expect to see.
Yeah, we'll be talking. We'll be talking more pig later tonight, but we're going to talk about basketball before we get into some dice later. But yeah, I think Dink had noted that the double big that was pretty successful. We saw it for 5 minutes. It was plus 28 net rating there. I don't think that was a main story. We could talk about that, but I thought the main story, and you guys would probably agree, that I thought SGA was awesome. They ran a lot of really, really high pick and roll. I thought that was a big takeaway for me, how high Hartenstein was setting the screens. Hartenstein set so many good screens to really get SGA rolling downhill, killed him in pick and roll. I thought that was a big part of it. Their half court offense was spectacular. 120 points per 100 in the half court is one of their best, second best playoff performance from them there. I thought that was really the story, was how well their offense handled it. They made their open three-pointers. They were very bad. I think 6 to 20 in the first game on wide open three-pointers and shot about 50% from them with the similar volume there. So, yeah, what was OKC's offense besides SGA kind of rolling there? And then obviously Aaron Wiggins we'll talk about too. But Austin, what else did you see from OKC's offense to really put the hammer down on the Indiana defense?
Yeah, so I think one thing I noted at the end of the last pod was despite Shea putting up 38, it was on 30 shots, and I didn't really feel like he elevated his teammates. I thought he did a better job in this one. Despite OKC shooting a pretty solid 38.9% from three, their starters didn't really shoot well from three. I'm looking at just like four of 17 from three. The non SGA starters made three threes the whole game, and yet they were plus 23 cumulative, plus 4.6 as a cumulative starting unit. And I think Shea is a large reason for that. 8 dimes, only one turnover, I believe, two turnovers. He had 5 stocks. I just felt like he contributed on both ends. He got to the line 12 times, and I thought he just put his teammates in better positions to succeed than in game one.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. We saw Casey was screening for him a pretty good bit on top of the Hartenstein stuff. I thought that was part of their game plan, and that was something we'll talk about Indiana not really able to be successful there. But Dink, yeah, anything you want to add on how OKC kind of cruised to 123? And should note, like I noted, the half court offense. They didn't get transition again. They lost the fast break points. They barely got any fast break points at all. And again, that's been a pretty big story here, just the lack of transition, which I think is certainly working in OKC's favor overall. But anything else from OKC's offense that stood out to you in dropping to 123?
Yeah, I think the other note, along with SGA really being dominant offensively, was how much better Chet Holmgren looked in Game 2 compared to Game 1. Really comfortable in the first quarter, had like 9 points in the first quarter. I thought at one point he took a long two that I thought he could have like drove to the basket and taken an aggressive kind of attempt to get the line or get an easy dunk. And I thought in general, though, he had a shot going. He looked kind of comfortable and in rhythm. I thought J Dub also, when he was the lead ball handler and the primary ball handler, like early in the game, they were trapping him and kind of aggressively defending him a little bit and trying to speed him up. And I thought he made a nice adjustment in his second rotation, and then in the second half of the game, playing much more under control. And it felt like, just in general, a lot of the first game felt like Shea kind of felt like he was in rhythm, but a lot of the other guys didn't feel like they were as in rhythm. And I think that kind of caught up to them in the second half. And in this game, it felt like from the start, it felt like more of the Thunder teammates were all kind of playing in rhythm together. And it looked a little bit like it felt different in the first half. I think they were up at the end of the first quarter by 6 when they were up by 9 or something like that at the end of the first quarter in game one. But everything felt better. Like game one, it felt like, oh, they're just getting so many turnovers and they're racking up so many extra possessions. This felt like more sustainable during the course of the game. And so I think that was a big thing for me, was just how much more comfortable Chet Holmgren looked kind of out there offensively. And then I thought Hartenstein was fantastic in the minutes that he was out there, really controlling the boards, making Indiana have to fight for every board, making it so that Indiana couldn't kind of release people down the floor. Like one of the things that they really like to do is get the ball and go and kind of test at transition layups, or to just try to kind of get the ball in Halliburton's hands. And it kept having to be contested battles for rebounds where, Hartenstein was like tipping balls around, and then Indiana would have to have 2 defenders to come in and get a defensive rebound. And all of a sudden, they're just a little bit slowed. And I think all of that stuff kind of added up for OKC in terms of how they played. So I was really impressed with the way that not only Shea kind of dominated and controlled the game, like the MVP that he was this year, but I also thought J-Dub and Chet really played a little bit more under control. J-Dub got to the line 9 times. He still shot the ball kind of poorly, but I thought shot selection was totally fine. And I thought his ability to handle in the pick and roll and create for others was also good when he was out there. A lot of those second unit threes that they got from Caruso and from Wiggins were with J-Dub leading the offense there. So I thought it was good stuff from the Thunder's, Robins, along with their Batman.
Yeah, and then I do want to talk more about, I guess, the Alfreds. I think that's what Tom Haberstroh calls them. Aaron Wiggins was SGA going off like yes, it was the story, but that's not like surprising. Aaron Wiggins was the surprise. I was watching ESPN while I was writing matchups this morning, and the amount of people were like, I didn't have Aaron Wiggins on my big go card. He's like barely played. Like, no, he's been playing, and he's been pretty awesome. And he did kind of just add more space and add more athleticism, and he has a little bit more range shooting it from a little bit deeper. And then, Alex Caruso, again, like this guy is just such a playoff performer, obviously on the defensive end, but finally got to open looks. He missed a lot of open looks in game one. I think you guys talked a little bit about that. But that was really the story, was their bench domination. We'll talk about Indy's bench. There were some issues I definitely want to talk about, but Dort, I thought Dort was great. Like, we'll talk about Halliburton struggling. But really, of anybody else on the secondary among Alex Caruso, Wiggins, I guess the big story, I think, we'll talk about it more on the DFS show, but like, does Aaron Wiggins like have like this locked in role now? And I think Caruso's pretty stable. Talked about Hartenstein already, but Austin, anybody else you want to kind of shout out? I thought Kaysen was fine, scored the first basket of the game. And one other random thing, I thought it was odd that SG was not handling it all. Like the first 7-8 possessions, he was playing off the ball, and then after that, they really turned it up on him. But anything else you notice on the OKC offensive side before we switch sides here, Austin?
Well, you did mention every single player on the roster, so it's hard to talk about someone else.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
No, you're good. I would back up that Caruso and Wiggins playing really well. And I think for the people that haven't watched OKC this year, a lot of them mentioning Caruso's defense as like, oh wow, I didn't realize he was this good. But he really has done this all year, whether you look at the advanced stuff or his stock number, everything about it he's done all year. It's actually his offense that has probably been more of a departure from what, if you have watched him all season, he's much more aggressive in the playoffs. I don't know if that's a conscious thing or just the way teams are defending him or what, but it isn't just, okay, so there was a play, first of all, when he's in the corner and he gets a pass kicked to him from the wing, he's firing it pretty much automatically in these playoffs. And then there was one play where he had, it might have been Siakam on him in the corner. He goes jab step, pump fake, jab step, and then pulls up from 3 over the hand, which that's just not really what we think of Alex Caruso what he normally does in the regular season. And then the other thing too is he's leading a lot of these fast breaks, even when he's not getting the steal. I think he had no steals this past game, no blocks. But he was handling the ball in transition quite a bit. He just gets out and runs. And I feel like he's also been more aggressive, just getting downhill, getting fouled. So yeah, I don't have a strong analysis that Alex Caruso is, this goated offensive player, but I do wanted to note that the biggest departure for Alex Caruso is he's been much more aggressive offensively than probably his career body of work.
Yeah, to that point, he basically ran even with J-Dub on front court touches, 27 for J-Dub, 26 for Caruso, 4 paint touches for Caruso. We saw him cut to the basket a couple times. His ability to connect on offense has always been, I thought, an unheralded aspect of his game there. Think anything else you wanted to shout out, or we could just talk about how Indy got kind of really stymied here?
No, I think we can move over to Indy, and I think the starting point that I'll toss out for Indy in this one to me was really kind of how lost the second unit kind of looked out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we saw Obi Toppin have a really tough first rotation in game one and then play really, really well after that. And I think in a lot of ways, he's going to be a little bit of a barometer for this team in their second unit because the way that TJ McConnell and Ben Matherin are able to generate some offense, and TJ got some buckets in garbage time to kind of inflate his stat line a little bit. But the way that those guys are going to be able to generate offense is in a way that OKC sort of wants Indiana to try to be generating offense. Whereas the way that when Obi Toppin's going, it's kind of the way that OKC doesn't really want Indiana to be generating offense. Okay, like Obi Toppin, when he's going, it's going to be as a result of ball movement or transition. And when Matherin or Caruso, or not Caruso, Matherin or McConnell are going, it's going to be as a result of sort of like isolation half court type play. And so I think Obi struggled in this one, did not shoot the ball very well. And as a result, just 1 for 8 from the floor, 1 for 5 overall. Had a couple of contests at the rim that he was a little bit out of control and kind of lost. Those, and we know like missed layups in the playoffs. Those are basically effectively turnovers, oftentimes because you're a man down, kind of getting back on defense. So I thought that was a big barometer for Indiana's struggles from game two after playing successfully in game one. Was just like Obi Toppin struggled and the second unit struggled as a whole, and that's where OKC, in part because of Aaron Wiggins' exceptional play as well, was able to gap Indiana and a couple times like in ways that were not happening in game one, where OKC was building leads, but not like gapping them up to like 20. These were gapping up to 20 and then 25, and then like Indiana to work back from there. And so I think the second unit for OKC is where Indiana really struggled offensively.
Yeah, and just some macro stats before I send it over to Austin here. Indiana's offense in Game 2 had 8.7 possessions, percentage of their possessions in transition, second lowest. I'm sorry, bottom 5 of the year. Fifth worst transition efficiency. They're not scoring in transition at all. That was a trend in Game 1 as well. And then another stat I found that was interesting was their late clock performance has been horrible. They have been at 6 of 31 with the shot clock under 7 seconds. So that's been a big issue there. They haven't been able, they've just been really stuck late in the clock. Siakam's really struggled late in the clock as well. So yeah, 19.4 effective. I'm sorry, 19.4 percentage, 25 effective field goal percentage there. But and then I did. So yeah, let's talk more specific stuff here though, if you want to, Austin. Halliburton, right? Like Halliburton only scored 5 points in the first 3 quarters. Certainly the pressure that they're providing from their Dort, Casey Wallace, Alex Caruso, mostly Caruso who guarded him really well. Do you blame Halliburton for like not being? That was like when I was listening to ESPN. That's what they were like. Oh yeah, Halliburton's got to be more aggressive. Like, okay, I mean, try. Thoughts on Halliburton, who's been generally pretty low usage in this matchup? How do you think Halliburton can turn it around? And do you like kind of blame him for not having much scoring punch for the first 3 quarters in these 2 games?
I don't really blame him. I mean, he put up 17. Like, how many point guards are putting up 17 like against this OKC defense? Yeah. Like, I think it's just worth noting that like when you have the ball, when you are the one that starts the possession with the ball against OKC, it is extremely difficult to score versus them. Like, this is the worst matchup in the NBA for that. And he was relatively efficient. He did turn it over 5 times. One trend we've seen in this playoffs is like teams, once they get in the flow with OKC in series, they know that if they have, it's not even an advantage in fast break. If it's 2-on-2, they are really pushing it because they don't want to get into that half court offense. And like, you can look at the overall pace of the game and show that it's like, it was only 97.5 pace. But I felt like the Indiana was really trying to get into transition when they could. Granted, OKC shot well, and there were like a lot of times where they were bringing the ball at the net, so they didn't have the opportunity to. But when they had the opportunity, they were trying to push it. But then once it got into the half court, I really did feel like there was long clock possessions. One other thing worth noting is like a lot of the turnovers that Indiana did have, and by the way, the turnover battle was actually a lot more even. So interestingly, in
Mhm.
game one, it was 24-6, and OKC still lost, and that was kind of why Drew and I were like, "Oh, this might be close." Interestingly, the turnover battle was much closer, 15-13, yet OKC won. Um, the interesting thing is that Indiana, most of their turnovers were off of getting stripped. I didn't feel like they were making a ton of like picked off passes, but like when you watch it, Indiana is like so intentional that OKC is going to pick off passes. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like Halliburton and Nemhard would drive into the paint and then do their stupid, jump pass. But then they would get the collapse on. And they would just throw it way over the heads, like backwards towards the half court line. And it was like, okay, well, there's 9 seconds off the clock. That wasn't a pass that created an advantage because they're so scared of throwing these flat angle passes that get picked off. They're like overthrowing passes. They're lobbing passes way over people's heads. And there were so many possessions in game two where like Indiana was like running to the baseline or running to the half court line just to save the ball from going out of bounds. There were just so many of those where like those aren't value added passes. And again, like I don't know what the solution is because they're trying to avoid throwing the passes into the hands of the OKC players. But just like even the threat of OKC, possibly intercepting these passes are creating these like they're changing the angle. It's almost like a shot blocker changing the gravity at the rim, but they're changing the angle of these takeout passes. I don't know if you guys noticed that or have any thoughts on that, but that really like lengthened the time of the half court possessions.
Think you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I noticed it as well. And it was another one of these things where I was like giving credit in my head to Halliburton and Carlisle for like, they must be really stressing and emphasizing the difference between kind of live ball and dead ball turnovers in the sense that
Mhm.
like we can have a ball go out of bounds. We can have a ball, be a backcourt violation. We can have a ball end up in a shot clock violation because like we're in trouble, but we cannot allow OKC to get out in transition. Obviously, it's still net negative in terms of the effect of a possession and challenging for them. I thought, the broadcast was really harping on a lack of Halliburton's aggressiveness, and then he did get a little bit aggressive in the third and fourth quarter, mostly the third quarter, and that's where the point total started to kind of get up. I thought in that third quarter, what he was doing to be more aggressive, though, was still like working towards step back shots. It's not working towards the rim. And so the question is like ultimately if the solution for Tyrese Halliburton for being more aggressive in this series is working further and further away from the rim, which is kind of what we talked about kind of coming into the series, is like how does he generate points near the rim for Indiana? We don't know how that happens, and thus it's going to be a tougher series for him unless he gets really aggressive from deep threes, which is kind of how he turned it up in the third quarter. I think that might be a way that Tyrese Halliburton can try to put more of his impact on the game, but I don't think that's necessarily a long term successful path for Indiana scoring efficiently, right? Like Halliburton shot the ball well and effectively in the third quarter to kind of put those points on the board. And overall in the game, he was fine, 3 for 8 from three, 7 for 13. But you'll notice no free throws for him. And in general, in those possessions, they're going to be fairly quicker possessions as well, which like you get into then if you're playing quicker possessions, you're lengthening the number of possessions in the game, which if you're an underdog in this situation, I don't know necessarily that you want to be playing like extra possessions in terms of the game. You want to be playing with pace offensively to try to get your quickest and your best shot possible. But if your quickest and your best shot possible is like, a 27-foot step back three, that's not sustainable offense really. So I thought that some of the criticisms I thought the criticisms were overblown on Halburn in terms of trying to be more aggressive because I just don't think the path to him being more aggressive result in rim shots for them. I think what he's trying to do by being a little bit more passive is trying to work the ball around the perimeter in the offense to try to help somebody else find a place that you can attack and get to the rim, or to get the ball on Siakam on a mismatch, or do some of that C action that Caitlin Cooper has been highlighting. It's been going on around Twitter with Indiana's play sets. I think that stuff's all the stuff that can get you more sustainable offense. I think the Halliburton being more aggressive stuff is not the most sustainable offense.
Yeah, they're just not getting in the paint either. That's been OKC's strength. Halliburton didn't really drive it much. Pascal Siakam has 12 drives all season, been shooting a lot of jumpers as well and struggled. He's 3 of 14 on jumpers. So, yeah, I thought Siakam has been facing some tough matchups. I mean, he has Caruso, he has J-Dub on him, second team all defense there. So it's been really tough for those guys. And the secondary guys, I kind of want to highlight Ben Mathurin. I thought Ben Mathurin was able to score enough, but he had two of those live ball turnovers, which were pretty costly. I'm pretty sure they scored on both those. And one thing that I wanted to talk about, which we talked about SGA, why was Matherin on SGA like so much of the game? That was like really stunning that they were like half court offense starting out that way. That was very perplexing to me. We did see a little bit of Aaron Nesmith, who played pretty well again, hit some big shots again as well, and even drove some closeouts. Nesmith was pretty strong here. But yeah, I didn't cover all the role players this time, Austin. But yeah, anybody else? Like Nemhard really was quiet down the stretch too. Didn't play a lot. He didn't play a lot in the fourth quarter because where the game was. But I guess my question is like, how do you kind of help Halliburton? Well, we all agree that this is just like such a tough matchup for him. So, kind of who and how could take a little pressure off Halliburton to make this a little bit more of a better offense for them?
I don't think there's like like if there were an obvious solution, I think Carlisle and the Pacers would have,
Yeah.
like I don't think there's an obvious solution. I think it's one of those where you plug one hole and open another one. And so like for example, I think playing more Matherin helped them kind of alleviate the pressure on Halliburton and somewhat Nemhard to have more outlets to handle the ball. But that's kind of what leads to Matherin on SGAs because that might have been like Shepard's rotation spot. Like Shepard played,
Yeah.
let's see, he played a minute 49 in the first half. That was his, and then he checked in for the last 4 seconds. So he played a minute 53 the entire first half because they were trying to get more offense in there. And like, yeah, you get another ball handler, but then you lose the Shepard defense that probably would be guarding SGA that now goes to Matherin. And like, granted, I think Matherin's been competing on that end and focused more in the playoffs than he has throughout his career. And if you like think back to his days at U of A, like he was at one point in his amateur career thought of as like a two-way tools to play defense kind of player, and it hasn't really translated in the NBA. But like now that he's been de-emphasized in the playoffs as an on-ball threat, like he has been trying more. He was getting cooked a bit by SGA, just like creating separation and just like Matherin doesn't have those sort of like he's just not used to guard. He wasn't staying like SGA was creating a lot of space on a step back. So I'm not saying he did a great job, but like he at least was trying, and that's just something you have to give up if you want another sort of ball handler and scorer in this unit. So like you could go back to Shepard for more defense, but then that is that kind of is a struggle for your other question, which is where does more offense come from? And like I don't think that the answer is TJ McConnell. Like Drew said, like a lot of his points came in garbage. Just like if TJ's in, he really has to be on the ball, right? So like he OKC's leaving him wide open in the corner, and like OKC is daring. Like OKC with every other player on the roster is at least if they're leaving a player, they're hard closing to try and recover. They're not doing that with TJ McConnell. They're just leaving him wide open and daring him to shoot. And like you basically, if you want to play TJ, he has to be on the ball, which is why we rarely see these TJ Halley overlap. We saw a little bit in game 2, but like, yeah, I don't think this is a TJ series. So like, I'm not really answering your question because I don't know. I don't know what you do. I think they won in game 1 because Obi was really good and Obi was really bad in game 2. And I think like Obi is a pretty good fit for this series. You can play more Obi, but like I didn't really think that Siakam or Miles Turner was the problem. I think like as basic as this sounds, like the best path to Indiana winning besides going home is just not fouling, like preventing 33 free throw attempts. They can't control that OKC is going to shoot 88% from the line, but they can, play a part in not letting them go to the line 33 times. So like that's the most obvious path to me of like how they come back. And we'll go into like game 3 predictions in a bit, but like it is a bit worrisome that there's not a lot of other knobs to turn, right? Like they fixed the turnover battle and like yeah, OKC rebounded more, but like it wasn't out of the. It was more like Indiana overperformed from the rebounding perspective in game 1, and OKC just responded by playing more bigs. So like, I think the free throw line's the real thing I can think of that would swing things in Indiana's favor.
Yeah, to that point, we haven't seen the high foul callers come in yet. We haven't seen Tony Brothers yet. We haven't seen Scott Foster yet. I think we only saw one of like the 5 high volume foul callers out there. It was Ben Taylor. I think he's like 5th. So I think we're going to get like a pretty high foul calling group for game 3 for what it's worth. So I think that'll kind of work against them. But Tink, do you want to take a crack at this question and I guess adjustments? I think the big question is like, do you just let SGA keep cooking you? That's one point. But yeah, if you want to take a crack at how Indy can kind of generate offense against this ridiculously good defense.
Yeah, we'd like to talk a lot about how these series become chess matches, and ultimately like you're taking the team that's going to be able to take more pieces off the table from the other team. And I think one of the things that we're starting to see that Austin was kind of illuminating there is some of Indy's players, while we've like really lauded their depth during the course of the regular season, or during the course of the regular season in the playoffs, in the Eastern Conference, some of those players were able to be successful, even though they were kind of more one-way-ish players, because the overall defenses that they were playing were weaker defenses that weren't really that Halliburton and Siakam themselves could kind of take over the offense, or McConnell and could take over the offense. Shepherd having a harder time out there when you need those secondary shooters to actually like make shots and be out there and be offensive pluses. And so he's starting to get a little bit de-emphasized. They lost Sheriff Walker due to injury. They're having a harder time playing the bigs with Thomas Bryant or Tony Bradley because of the way that their deep drop coverage and the higher screens, and like how do you keep OKC out of the middle of the court in where Shea's very comfortable in operating. So there's just not a lot of like rotation personnel paths for Indy to really like tighten things up. I do think that the way the matchup is set up, I think Siakam, Turner, and Obi Toppin are going to be the guys who have to play well for Indiana to be successful. I think that all three of those guys, I think Siakam's played fairly well in both games. I think Toppin's played well in the first game, not well in the second. I thought Turner played well in the second, not as well in the first. They need 2 or 3 of those guys to be playing well together in the same game to kind of have a shot here. And then they need Nembhard to play really well because he's the other guy that OKC is going to give a little bit more opportunities to. And whereas on OKC side, you're seeing that when they narrowed things down a little bit, when they're like, okay, we're not going to play AJ Mitchell, we're not going to play Jalen Williams, okay, like Aaron Wiggins, we're going to play him over Isaiah Joe. Well, we've been talking about how OKC's guys, a lot of their guys are like capable two-way players because they've hung in there defensively. Guys like Isaiah Joe have hung in there a little bit better defensively than anticipated based on their profile. And Wiggins is a very solid two-way player. And so like, they're just running more and more two-way players out there. So even if we get into, the brunt of the series where you get some of the more aggressive foul callers and you get maybe OKC getting called for some of these, more physicality fouls and different things like that. Well, OKC, the depth that they're rolling into is still like two-way players, where the depth Indiana is rolling into is more one-way players. I think in this series specifically, that's being sort of highlighted because of how good OKC's defense is, that like you can't have a 1.5 way player against OKC because it becomes a one-way player. And I think that's ultimately like what's happened with some of these secondary pieces for Indiana and Thomas Bryant and Ben Shepherd and to some extent TJ McConnell as well. And that's really like starting to shorten the options for Indiana. So I don't think there's a lot of good solutions. I think you're going to continue to see Mathurin out there as much as he can hold up. He at least provides size. He provides secondary scoring ability. He shot, I think, 40% catch and shoot on threes this year. So he's been good in that catch and shoot spot. You can get him into the corner and get looks there. The interesting thing to me is going to see like, McConnell's been so effective for them during the course of the playoffs, but I mean, I'm wondering if at some point in the series we don't get like a Halliburton 40 and a McConnell 8 minutes, no overlap, and we just get like things really condensed with Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Mathurin, Toppin, Siakam, Turner. Like, I'm wondering if we get to that point, and maybe it's a game 4 type thing, but I think that's kind of the direction we're trending in right now.
Yeah, I didn't play Halliburton in DFS, and I kept tilting, hanging out with the guys. Like, God, McConnell just finds his spots in the paint, doesn't shoot threes. The transition game's not there. He just finds his way to getting there. So I'm with you. I think he can get cut down. Yeah, Mathurin, I think, is going to get a look in the first half, and I think it could be a lot or a little. Kind of like Aaron Wiggins, really cut down game 1. I think it could be like kind of either way there. And then, as you noted, you guys, I think that it just has to be 3-point shooting. Like, it sounds so elementary to say that, but they still shot 7 of 16 in the corners in game 2 after their ridiculously strong second half. They shot 8 of 9 on corner threes in the half court in game 1. That's pretty much why they won the game. So yeah, really, I think Nesmith has to play more. He's been really good on J-Dub. I think he's just got to figure out a way to play 33, 34 minutes. He's been really, really valuable to them. I like how he drove closeouts a little bit more in the last game. So yeah, Siakam has to play more and play better. But yeah, I think that they need like those two guys to really step up on top of Nembhard. I think Miles Turner is really good. I think relative to expectation, I would say Miles Turner is probably hands down been their best player there. But yeah, I don't have too much else to add. I guess we could maybe get into any other. Yeah, I guess Jarris Walker maybe. I doubt it, but any other possible adjustments that you wanted to kind of cover? Also?
Yeah. Well, I'll just note on Jarris Walker that Carlisle said before, maybe Carlisle's playing games, but before game 2, Carlisle said that Jarris Walker's not close. So I think if Jarris Walker was healthy, I think we'd be seeing him, but I don't think we're going to see him in the series based on the sounds of the injury recovery description.
Yeah. So I was just going to +1 what Mike said. Like, to answer your previous question, like outside of the free throw shooting, it's not really – like it's not really a personnel thing that I think has to change a lot. Although I would probably play Shepard a little bit more. Um,
Mhm.
I would play Shepard over McConnell
Yeah,
is
McConnell.
probably like the
Yeah.
one dial, and then more Neesmith. But like I think it's a +1 to what you said, which is just 3 points. Like it's not the personnel that needs to change; it's sort of like the philosophy that needs to change. And like
Mhm.
Indiana, they were a bottom 10 3 point attempt rate team in the regular season, and like it's because they're so unselfish. And for all the reasons that we praised them and that they got to this point was because they're passing up good shots for great shots. Unfortunately, against OKC, if you pass up a good shot,
Mhm.
you may not get a better one the rest of the possession. Like there are two
Mhm.
people that I saw that were shooting the first moderately good open look from three, and that's Aaron Neesmith and that's Obi Toppin. And everybody else in Indiana is doing what they did all season, which is being unselfish and attacking these hard closeouts and swinging the ball. But then either you're like, but then they're like we talked about earlier, like you're so afraid of turning the ball over against OKC, you don't want to get them so far in rotation, especially because you don't have a Giannis type that getting downhill is an automatic bucket or free throw, right? So like Indiana really needs to start telling the rest of their players like if you get an open look from three, that's already the opportunity we created. You have to shoot it. We may not get a better opportunity the rest of this possession. That is really what they have to do. And it's not like Indiana has bad shooters. Like I don't think they have elite shooters, but like everyone who they've been playing for the most part outside of McConnell can hit an open three, and like they just need to up the volume. That like we've seen it in spurts like early against Cleveland, but they haven't really embraced it the way you need to beat OKC. So yeah, just +1 to what you were saying. It's really the 3 point volume.
Yeah, and last thing, I'll end with some coach quotes from the stuff I have to add. Mark Daigneault called Indiana an acquired taste, and he kind of said it took a game to kind of get the rhythm on offense. SGA had noted that they kind of had thrown a lot of punches, and then also, this is the last thing I kind of want to talk about is like, do they take SGA down a little bit? I don't think they care. Rick Carlisle said after the game, like he's like, "Oh yeah, just you can basically put 34 points on the board before Game 3 even starts." So I don't know. I don't really think they're going to adjust. I think SGA, like for DFS, I don't know how you don't captain him. His price didn't go up that much, but I think any other possible adjustments that we could see coming before we make predictions and close out.
Yeah, I know that they're saying that they're not really going to change things. I think at some point you're going to have to try to turn this into a 3 point variance game.
Yeah.
I think in game one they were so effective at limiting 2 point percentage for OKC, and then since then they haven't been as effective in game two, and so I think you could see a mid game adjustment. I don't think that's something they're going to start with, where they're sending extra help or extra bodies, but I think especially on the road, it's like let's make Caruso, let's make Dort, let's make Turner, let's make those guys, or excuse me, let's make Caruso, let's make Dort, let's make Case and Wallace, let's make those guys shoot over
Mm-hmm.
Shea, and we'll see. But I don't think they have solutions one on one to stop Shea or to limit Shea. Like Nembhard's not a good solution. Neesmith, I don't think is a great like he's their best solution, but I don't think he's a great solution. And Matherin's not. So like I expect if they continue to go one on Shea, that he's going to be very successful.
Yeah, my last note I'll say, and I'm kind of last noting it again. Carl had a little bit of a hint to me. He's done this a couple times, and he was almost like jealous of how the role players helped out at home. And I think he's like kind of crossing his fingers really hard that like Ben Matherin or Ben Shepherd or somebody off the bench kind of comes alive and can kind of balance this thing out after what OKC role players did there. But yeah, also anything you want to add? I think you guys both went to OKC and seven. Is that still kind of how you're feeling? Did OKC's impressive game two kind of swing you guys? Where you at, Austin?
No, I still would stick with OKC in seven. Like if we were like sort of shading it one way or the other, like I would like I think it's more like it's OKC in six over Indiana in seven. If like but like it's still
Mm-hmm.
OKC in seven for me. Um, yeah, I haven't bet anything for game three. Um, I thought the line was pretty fair. It opened at 5, and it's kind of 5.5 now. Nothing that has moved in a way that makes me want to bet either side. If I were to bet anything, I kind of like the under, just because 220 is a big total for like, as the series goes deeper, like scoring goes down, and 220 is a big number for the finals, anyways. And like, yeah, Indiana does need to shoot more threes and whatnot, but like they limited the turnovers pretty well, and like I'm just taking the under, even if there's more foul callers with the refs. Like 59 free throw attempts between the two teams, that feels like a very optimistic to repeat itself. So I haven't bet anything yet, but I think like if I were, I'm gonna say OKC wins just because that's for my prediction because they're 6 point favorites, and I think it'll be a bit more of a grindy game. But I don't feel that strongly about any of those takes.
Yep. And Dink, where you at on this one?
Yeah, my thermostat is tilted back down to OKC in 6 now. So like we're vacillating between the 5 and 7 with OKC. But I thought the mention that you had in terms of or Austin had in terms of the turnover battle being close and OKC winning a blowout game was a little bit eye opening to me in terms of like how easy this was for OKC in half court. And that was a little bit of a turning point for me. I'm expecting Indiana to play well. Game 3, I'm not going to be betting this game. I I'm more probably like leaning towards under later in the series than Game 3. I still think offenses are probably going to have a little bit more success in Game 3. And if it does get foul call heavy, I do worry about that. But I'm just not going to be betting anything in Game 3. But I'll lean OKC in 6 at this point. I think Indy takes one of the next two at home, and then I think OKC defends home court in Game 5, and then I think it's like OKC is going to be favored going into Game 6, and like, do they close it out then? That's where I think we're at.
Yeah, I'm kind of OKC in 6. I think I did bet one thing. I've actually bet this in all the games. I've been betting. Caesars has this weird market for dunks in the first 3 minutes, and I've been betting no dunks in the first 3 minutes, and it's hit both times. Minus 130 game one, minus 140 game two. It's minus 140 game three. If you guys, if it's still out there. The Pacers only dunked the ball twice all game, and the OKC there's no transition. Like it's very and they're going to shoot more 3 pointers. SGA doesn't dunk. Like I don't know. I thought that was a really weird market that I've been kind of hammering. But yeah, I'm leaning taking OKC. I just think that they've been able to control the game really, really well, and I just think that the 3 point shooting is going to be kind of quelled a little bit. I think they did a good job of like not leaving the corners as open overall, and I like how they were closing out on Aaron Nesmith, who got a couple transition shots up overall. So yeah. Anything else from you, Austin? I will say I really enjoyed your end take there. Going with Joker SGA. If you have another nice take to get us out of here.
Um, I think my overarching take here is just that to the victors go the spoils, and by what that I mean, like I've seen so much criticism after Game 1 on Mark Dagnall, who I think the three of us here agree like no one's perfect, but he's one of the sharper coaches in the NBA, and like it's just like I feel like a lot of the larger media and public sort of reacts to these one game like OKC losing, and then now Dagnall's a bad coach and Carlisle is this great coach, which he is. But like I feel like now I haven't heard any of that because OKC just won in Game 2, and it's just I don't know. I guess my sort of like end takeaway here is just how much of a prisoner of the moment we all are, ourselves included. But both of these teams are here for a reason, and I think like these are two very very good coaches that are like you see the chess moves happening in real time, and I think I really respect that like how integral of a part of each of their journeys that the head coaches have been to get to this point. And I don't really appreciate this Dagnall slander that has come out all of a sudden because variance has happened in the last 8 minutes of a couple of games in like a really good what is it like 15 game run so far, and there's been a couple 8 minute variance swings. That's probably my complaint to end this pod.
Yep, I like it. I 100% agree. Dink, anything else? You could wrap us up, and then me, and producer Ryan could get the food that's been cooking downstairs. It smells so good.
No complaints for me, no takes for me. We'll agree that Dagnall, very very good coach. I mean, both these guys are top 5 coaches in the NBA, and Dagnall, while I think he did make a small mistake in Game 1, it's not the reason that they lost Game 1 entirely with avoiding the double bigs, and I thought he corrected it in Game 2. More Kenrich Williams, like we talked about, Kenrich was really impactful in the minutes that he played as well. So, coaches can try things and it cannot work, and that can be a mistake, and that's okay. And see how they respond to it. And I thought he responded to it great in Game 2. So I thought really well done by Mark Dagnall there. But yeah, that'll do it for us. Mike, as he mentioned, we're eager to get to some food, so I'll just leave it on this note for you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, please consider leaving a rating and review. It helps circulate the podcast. If you're catching us on our YouTube feed, Establish Run NBA on YouTube, you can like and subscribe the video there as well to help circulate our content. If you're interested in any of our premium content, you can go to establishtheRun.com/subscribe-NBA for more details on our premium NBA product offerings or on our WNBA offerings, where the season keeps marching on the WNBA side as well. We're really proud of the work that we're putting out on both of those products. We will be back on Thursday to talk through the results of Game 3 and preview Game 4. So for Ryan, for Mike, for Austin, for myself, take care, everybody. Enjoy Game 3.